Time right now is 2:02 on Live Impact News on WCNC Plus. I'm Jane Monreal. We are keeping you weather alert for the weekend. We all know by now that millions of people are going to be impacted with this historic winter storm. And with that, we have our Nate Morabito covering some of the history, digging into some of the data, I should say, on some of these past winter weather patterns. Nate, what did you find?
Yeah, I mean, we've heard a lot about this 2002 ice storm this week, right? Larry was here talking about it. He was showing me earlier. Every major weather event, he scribbles information on a piece of paper. And he pulled out his piece of paper.
Even in here, he came and joined us at
he had some notes.
He had a piece of paper that was written, like every space was taken up.
At the time?
It was like a quadrant,
Yes.
every event. And I wasn't here I was here at the end of 2002, but I was in college still. And I texted my mom earlier, and she's like, yeah, I think we were out of power for a little bit. But this was a widespread major event. Mm-hmm. And I didn't really realize how big of a deal we were talking about. I wonder if we can pull up the archive footage just for a second. Yes. This doesn't even really give you the full perspective of it. But you'll see here fallen trees on people's homes. Mm-hmm. There are trees on people's cars back in 2002. There are fallen power lines, and that's a real problem for emergency crews. Same with the fallen trees. If you're trying to get to an emergency, you're going to have to go around these things. And so that's a little bit of an idea, from just a visual perspective of what kind of a nightmare that was. But then I got this report this week, and it's something I do every kind of major weather event. There is what's called a hazard mitigation plan. It's, it kind of sounds nerdy, but the truth is it's critical when it comes to protecting our community. And the city and the county and all the cities in Mecklenburg County come together every few years to update this plan. And this plan is kind of a gold mine. It's a history book of what has happened before. And I was reviewing this. I started earlier this week, and I kind of looked at it closer today. And this is kind of the big takeaway. Since 1999, there have been more than 700 severe weather events affecting Mecklenburg County. The 2002 ice storm caused $40 million worth of property damage. All of those 700 plus other events combined don't even come close to that number. So we're talking about hurricanes, flash flooding, tornadoes, and ice storm caused that much property damage. And I'll say this too, since the 60s, FEMA major disaster declarations, Mecklenburg County's only received 7 of them. That 2002 ice storm was one of them. Now, obviously, there are some differences. I know Brad talked about it this week. There were leaves on the trees still at that time. This was in early December, so the leaves can kind of hold more ice. That was the middle of the week. We're talking about the weekend here. But the whole idea of sharing this with you is that these storms can be really damaging.
Catastrophic.
And a few minutes ago, there was a big press conference, I'm sure you all carried it live, where at the time, a rookie firefighter who's now, in command of emergency management was kind of recalling that day and what it was like. And take a listen to White Graham, what he said about that situation that day and how busy it was for them.
At that time, we held an entire shift over, and it was so busy that we couldn't keep track of all the calls. And I remember walking on Fire Station 3 at, 3 or 4 in the morning, and all the firefighters were laid out on the floor because they'd been up all night.
He added that basically when you have a storm like this, you're going to have more fires, you're going to have more falls, you're going to have more emergency responses, which is why they want the roads clear. But again, if this becomes a real freezing rain and ice situation more than the sleet, much like the 2002 situation, this can really be devastating to our infrastructure, to our power lines, to our trees. I recently got one of my huge trees in my yard trimmed up a bit because I'm always worried,
Yeah.
But these big branches, you've heard them say how much weight, Chris Mulcahy was saying how much weight they can hold.
Right.
And when the ice piles on, it can be more and more difficult. So I just wanted to put it into context here because I've been hearing it all week.
Yeah.
I was out at a shoot earlier this week in the mountains. I had not really been in the newsroom since Monday. I was off on Thursday. And I kept hearing the 2002, and I'm like, let's really figure out how bad was this?
Yeah.
People still talk about it that were affected by it. What we don't want is another one of them.
Right.
Because if we're talking about the most costly disaster this county has faced, and it's going to be even worse than that potentially, that is scary.
Oh boy. And we have to come in I mean, and which is what we should do.
Right.
And what we want to do. This is what we are here for.
Right.
This is when the job is so
Critical.
matters and
Yes.
critical. But yeah, it's like we need to get to where we need to get to as other essential workers
Servant
need
was talking about
to.
this 2002 storm because he was in High Point at the time.
Yeah.
I mean,
And
what,
it's-
Tuesday when we were like, when Chris Mulcahy was
Oh, it was
really
Monday.
Yeah.
He was
Right.
talking Monday,
Yeah.
Chris was, this week.
Right.
And that's what Larry will tell you, too, is that there was only a couple days of, like,
Yeah.
preparation for 2002.
Right.
We've been talking about this all week long.
Yes.
Right.
And now we're really in crunch time where we're, getting close to 24 hours away
Mm-hmm.
from really when it's starting to crank up. And I think the point is, unless you have to be on the road, be critical.
Right.
First responders, right?
Yeah.
Right.
We are communicating to people, particularly when we have an issue of maybe power outages and internet issues, like something like this could be really crucial. And so, yeah, you're going to have to be careful coming in. But you'll be here hopefully before it's really
Sure.
getting bad. You're working Saturday, right?
Yes,
you're
tomorrow, yeah, we'll start the 6 p.m. coverage, and I believe we'll actually stream a little bit beforehand, be here on Live Impact, and then take it to as long as we need
As long
to.
as we need
Yeah,
to.
and I know I'll be monitoring Sunday, kind of what's going on as well out and about. And I think that's where they're really concerned, is Sunday morning when we're going to really start seeing
Right.
those impacts. But really, Chris is saying tomorrow afternoon you really shouldn't be out on the road. That's
Right.
what Mulcahy
Right.
told us earlier today. So the messaging really is kind of starting to get, finer and finer about really what is needed here. And you heard the emergency officials saying, we are going to need the roads.
Yeah.
We're going to need you to stay off. If there's down power lines, do not approach it.
Right.
The difference between using 911 and 311. So it's just, it's wild. I was here during Hurricane Hugo, and I thought that I was a little kid at the time.
Right.
I mean, we were out of power for a couple weeks, and I thought, wow, I mean, how much worse could that really be? An ice storm caused more damage
Yeah.
than that hurricane.
Is that wild?
Yes, let's hope we don't ever repeat that.
Let us hope. But hope is not a strategy either, right? And
Right.
so we need to be prepared.
Yeah, we don't want to panic people. We just want
Right.
you to be prepared.
Yeah, so have just the basics, what you need when
Yeah.
it comes to medical and food and survival mode. We're going to be in survival mode. But like Chris also said, and Larry has said this as well, that back in 2002, as sophisticated as the weather models were then, they've even become so much more advanced. And so instead of the 2-3 day notice that people have, we've been talking about it
We talked
now
about it
all week. And so hopefully people are heeding the warnings. I think they are, because a lot of places are sold out of stuff.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's a Sunday too. So Sunday, what usually you have is church, you have grocery shopping. So hopefully the service workers, of course, will be working generally on a Sunday too. But beyond that, it's not like a Monday morning where you have school, where you have work, everyone trying to get to work. Who knows if that will make a difference? It's just going to be one of those where, I deal in facts. Like, that's my job, right? So
Right.
I want to see what happens.
Yeah.
But I do think the historic perspective is really important, because I didn't think an ice storm was kind of that big of a deal until I
Right.
saw that number. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
$40
We
million?
just don't think about it here.
When
you think about hurricanes first and foremost in the southeast as the most
Right.
as
Flash
the biggies.
flooding?
Right.
That as well.
And so what is the response like, where, they might be not used to it, but I've seen it in the north or,
Yeah.
Northeast and the Midwest and, by the Great Lakes, all these winter
There are
Arctic
well-oiled machines
storms.
for these things.
They've got that down,
Yeah.
whereas, there are going to be differences in responding to natural disasters between a hurricane and a winter storm, but with folks trying to still hit the road and like, oh, it's just ice.
Yeah.
Well, and the thing too
It is
like,
not just ice.
I grew up north, and I went to school up north, and I've been around a lot of this. But you'll hear the meteorologists say, like, ice, there's not much you can do. You are not going to be able to protect those power lines. We are totally at the mercy of what's going to happen. So stay off the road, yeah.
Yeah.
We
But-
we heard a reporter in Josh Stein's presser that didn't even think about cell phone towers. What happens if cell phone towers go out in this region? What happens then? Things I didn't even think about. I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah.
You know what?
It's a
I'm
real
even thinking like
possibility.
this. My laptop, it's going to be charged, right?
Right.
Right.
It's got a battery. Make sure I have my adapter for my phone.
Right.
Do I have a card? charger for my phone. Just simple stuff like that to make sure we can stay in communication with people we care for.
Sure.
Yes.
Number one, but also making sure, we got the grill. So what do we have?
Yep.
What do we have in the fridge? What do we have in the pantry? We haven't been to the grocery store this week yet, so we might be in trouble. But we got plenty of stuff
Yeah.
stored away, and we got a grill outside. And
There you go.
that's the other thing. People with, who has a generator? My neighbor, thankfully, has a generator.
Oh, good.
But it's just starting to think through the planning parts of when it happens, you're not panicking.
That is the message, too, is to be prepared so you don't panic.
Right.
All right, so that's what we're going to try to do here. That's what we are doing here.
Yep.
Here on Live Impact News and WCNC Charlotte. And we are going to bring you extended coverage, like we've alluded to, all hands on deck here on WCNC,
All weekend.
starting tomorrow night at 6 p.m., and we'll take you through Sunday. All right, Nate Morbido joining us with some of the history, stark data.
Yeah, only 3 major ice events since 1999, too, in Mecklenburg County.
That's wild.
It's rare, so we're just not used to it either.
All
We're not
right,
used to
exactly. Not used to it.
Yeah.